Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue. Good morning everyone. En ce début de réunion, je souhaite, au nom du Conseil municipal d'Ottawa, souligner qu'Ottawa est bâti sur le territoire non cédé de la nation
I would like to say that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe-Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation, as well as all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and their valuable past and present contribution to this land.
I'll ask the committee coordinator now to do a roll call.
Councillor Luloff.
Good morning.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Councillor Brockington. Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Vice Chair Kitts.
Here.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
You have quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Confirmation of minutes from the meetings on November 21st and the 2nd of December. Are those carried? Response to inquiries. I understand, Councillor Dudas, you'd like that held.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Postponements and deferrals. The item 5.1 is the 2024 BIA and Spark Street Mall Authority Annual Report and Audited Financial Statements. Those received. Okay, I think everything else has a presentation associated with it, so we'll go back to item 4.1, which is the VUT impact on building starts and rental market. Councillor Dudas? Or
I do have questions, but because I had brought it on behalf of Councillor Hill, if you don't mind, I'll let him go first and then I'll jump back on the board.
okay, Councillor Hill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To staff, what precisely is the problem that the vacant unit tax is established to fix?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I'll start off just giving a bit of a background in terms of the establishment of the VUT. A motion was passed by Mayor Watson in December of 2020, asking staff to study the vacant unit tax following a declaration of a housing crisis in Ottawa. We came back in 2021, having studied the vacant unit tax, and Council directed us to build a vacant unit tax program, which was approved in 2022. The purpose of the program is primarily to return unused or unoccupied homes back into the market supply. So homes that people are intentionally leaving vacant and not really targeting people that live in those homes or whose, these are primary residences for people, but people that are generally leaving those homes unoccupied, unused for several reasons, primarily speculative behavior and those types of things. So the goal is to get those houses back into the market and, of course, impact pricing and supply.
Thank you. And am I correct to interpret from this report that approximately 3/4 of vacant units that have been subject to the vacant unit tax are owned by individuals rather than corporations? How does staff reconcile this outcome with the policy's original intent to target speculative behavior? And what safeguards exist to prevent disproportionate impacts on small local property owners experiencing temporary vacancies?
That would be a correct interpretation. A majority of the folks that were charged the vacant unit tax are individuals. But again, a majority of folks that we have seen that are also engaged in speculative behavior are also individuals and not corporations. Generally, corporations are in, when they purchase homes, we find sometimes they're corporations that are owned by folks that either live outside the country or outside Canada, or corporations owned by people that live in Canada whose goal is to make a profit out of rental of that property. So we are making sure that we are not targeting individuals by making sure that we have appropriate exemptions. So one of the things that we continue to educate the public on is to help them understand that the goal of the VUT is not to tax people that are living in their homes or may have been, say, assigned to, perhaps work abroad or work in a different province for work purposes. As long as that remains your primary residence, you will not be taxed a VUT. If you're going to Florida over the winter for the snowbirds, you will not be charged the VUT. The VUT is really targeting people that are holding on to these homes. They don't live in these homes. They've left them vacant. They don't rent them. And again, they're sort of playing, this speculative behavior.
Thank you very much. I'm less concerned about the snowbird that's going down to Florida and more concerned about the person experiencing extended probate because of an estate transfer or because of low-level renovations for an individual family who breached the time schedule, both of which I've heard on several occasions are problematic. Staff have highlighted that $9.2 million in the vacant unit tax revenue was a benefit, particularly directed towards affordable housing. How are we ensuring that this is not just another revenue stream that is in fact unfairly taxing individual homeowners experiencing temporary or recurring life cycle vacancies, as revenue generation was absolutely not the intended outcome of this tax policy?
Through the Mayor, you're absolutely right. Revenue generation is not the primary purpose of this policy. The primary purpose of this policy is to make sure that homes are returned to the market. And to that point, we actually have multiple exemptions that are available to individuals to make sure that we're addressing a lot of those particular issues that you've talked about, where there's temporary vacancies due to life issues. So I think we were up to 10 or 15 exemptions that sort of cover those. We had another set of exemptions that were approved, I think, a year or two ago by this council to expand the list of exemptions to make sure that we're not unfairly targeting folks that this policy is not really intended to target. So the purpose of this policy is to make sure that we're bringing as many of those vacancies that are out there for all the wrong reasons back into the market, and making sure that we're protecting residents and individuals from that may have been sort of dealing with some of these temporary vacancies or life issues, as you sort of put it, from the tax.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The vacant unit tax was introduced as a narrow behavioral tool. It was intended to address harmful speculative vacancies. What we're seeing instead is a policy that's increasingly punitive, especially with the increased 1% per year tax that's going to be applied, procedurally unfair and misaligned with its original purpose. It applies escalating penalties without adequately distinguishing between speculative vacancy and unavoidable life cycle vacancies. It places a reverse onus on property owners to prove compliance, and it disproportionately affects individual owners and small housing providers, the very people that we are going to rely on to deliver this missing middle rental housing. Most concerning, the success of this policy is now being measured by the revenue that it generates. A behavioral tax that depends on ongoing vacancy to fund other priorities has lost its policy coherence. If vacancy declines, the revenue declines, and if revenue becomes necessary, vacancy becomes fiscally convenient. That is not sound foundation for housing policy. This report demonstrates that vacancy is complex, often temporary, and frequently resolved without intervention. It does not demonstrate that this tax is meaningfully changing behavior, improving affordability, or increasing occupied rental supply. I've been concerned with this punitive anti-housing policy since the get-go, which is why, with the support of Councillor Dudas, we directed a sunset clause to ensure a full review next term of council. As we look ahead, Council will need to ask whether this policy is achieving its stated objectives, or whether it's become a blunt instrument that creates uncertainty, discourages rental participation, and in fact functions at cross purposes to our housing objectives. Good housing policy should increase supply, reduce risk, and create some certainty in the market. I've heard many problematic incidents from my residents and homeowners, leading me to believe that the implementation of this policy had had an overall negative impact. On those measures, the vacant unit tax falls short, and I believe that Council should be prepared to reconsider its continuation in the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Dudas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report states that 3,791 units that were tenanted in 2022 were converted to owner-occupied in 2023. That's a huge shift in tenure for a single year. Is staff confident these are legitimate occupancy changes, or are we simply seeing landlords reclassifying their properties to avoid the administrative burden and audit risk of the VUT, effectively rendering the data useless?
Mr. Mayor, I think that the change from 1 year to the next is not something that we are ready to comment on at this particular point in time. I think if we continue to see that trend, I think it would probably then warrant a comment from staff. This might just be normal activity from 1 year to the other that probably would occur even if the VUT was not in place. So I wouldn't necessarily attribute that change or because I mean we're talking about less than perhaps maybe 5%, if my math is right, of a shift in terms of corporations to individuals. And so I wouldn't necessarily attribute that to the VUT necessarily, just because we don't really have a trend. It's just 1 year to the next. Now, if we continue to see that, then I think it's worth warranting to see if there's any direct correlation with that, with the VUT.
Well, for condos and small multi-res buildings, which you say have the highest vacancy rates, staff have updated the numbers for 2022 to reflect the audit findings, increasing by about 100 vacant units for a total of 1,917. So looking at 2023, vacancies actually increased from 1,917 in 2022 to 2,149 in 2023. So my question is, if this tax is meant to return units to the market, why are we seeing an increase?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Mayor. So one of the things that we highlighted in our report that we just released in the fall of, or in December of last year, that sort of explained the 2024, the second year of the vacant unit tax, was the impact of audits. So if you recall, in 2023, when we brought a report on the VUT to this council, we did identify that there was a lot of missed opportunities in terms of audits that we were not able to get to because we did not have staff that were available to us. Council did approve 2 additional FTEs in order to be able to boost that audit capability. And the increase in the vacancies from the first year to the second year is 100% attributed to the audit function. Now that we're able to have auditors in place, we're able to do more effective audits and more larger audits, whereas we were not able to do that. We did not have the capacity to audit appropriately and more complete in the first year, and therefore there were lots of vacancies that went under the radar because we were not able to get to them through the audit function. So in summary, we had about 500 units that were identified through the audit process in the first year. We had 1,400 units identified through the audit process in the second year. That's almost 200% increase in terms of the units that had been previously vacant, unidentified, because we did not have enough staff, that were now identified, that we actually have enough staff to do the audits.
Have the 2023 units been audited yet?
So we have completed the cycle for the 2022 vacancy year and the 2023 vacancy year. So now we're in the process of auditing the 2024 vacancy year. So that's kind of where we are right now.
So my understanding, though, that when this tax was imposed, which I'll remind everyone, because I sound like a broken record, I completely oppose, and I've always have, and I always will. When this was implemented, my understanding was that eventually we'd get to a very minimal to zero amount of vacant units because everybody would be enticed to, put their units back on the market. So if we're seeing an increase, and I understand you're saying we're seeing that as a result of, an increased number of audits and identification, and we're still in the early days, shouldn't we be seeing a massive decrease? Shouldn't we be seeing all these units being returned to the market? When are we going to see that?
So I will say that 1,600 units were returned to the market in the first year. So if we really want to quantify that, even at $250,000 to build a unit, which is probably not possible in 2026 to build a unit for 250,000. That comes up to I think close to 200 million or so, or I think 400 million. I'm not sure what we had sort of put out there, but it's a significant capital investment. And I think through the tax, we're being able to get those units back. Yes, there are new vacancies that are coming into the market, but we did anticipate that new vacancies would come in. But again, they're coming in at a lower rate. And again, we're only in the second year of the VUT. We're going to be releasing the results for the third year, and the intent of the policy should be seen over time. I think as we move into the third year of reporting, now that we have we have a bit of a skewed number for the second year because of the increase related to the audits. But now that we have a baseline, I think we should start see those vacancies decrease. We've also increased the VUT rate for those repeat offenders. And next year, as a result of a motion, we will actually be bringing the profile of those repeat offenders to this council as a request that was put in place to report back on the profile of who's actually getting charged that 3%. Is it actually being focused, and is it actually dealing with the individuals that this council had sort of envisioned that this tax would deal with?
I don't have an eloquent speech. I despise this tax. I oppose it completely. I do appreciate your responses, Joseph, and your continued conversations with me about this. I look forward to seeing what happens with that sunset clause. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Joseph. We've gone down this road for a while together, and I appreciate that. Also, I wasn't aware it was being held today, so I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here just with some of my questions. But I did want to look at a couple of things. First of all, my colleague mentions repeat offenders, and I think that's really what we want to get to. I'm sure as part of that evaluation process that's taking place, maybe there'll be some kind of harmony or opportunity that may be presented by staff to say, you know, the repeat offenders, you're on the annual list. But if you live there and you've declared in the past, maybe there's an opportunity to make it every second year, third. Will there be a series of options for people that are regular homeowners that check that box every year, and on sales or transfers of homes, that would be the opportunity? Or is there going to be a whole basket of options presented back to council, maybe to make it easier? Because we really do want to go after the repeat offenders, and I know that's what you want.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That is indeed the goal. And we still continue to look at ways to improve the program, to make it better, to make it more effective, to make it less burdensome. We've improved the declaration form. If any of you have filled it out this year, you'll notice we're improving it every year to make it a little bit faster, a little bit quicker, even if we're shaving just a couple of seconds off every year. I think it is helpful for every resident in terms of the time that's actually going to be spent. Yes, so that's always going to be part of our goal in terms of seeing how can we make the administration of this program less burdensome as we move forward.
And I want to thank you on that, because I kind of rode you pretty hard about the initial rollout, and I can be firsthand to say it took me 6 minutes to do 2 properties, not just 1, 2, my mother's as well. And I have been audited, by the way, in the past. So there you go. So things are definitely working. When it comes to, and I'll probably put an inquiry in just to ensure that that information is part of whatever future report comes. I'm always asking, we had no email communications before for people. We had no way to be able to communicate with them. And I see a massive silver lining in cost savings, especially with the rates of Canada Post. You don't know if Canada Post is even going to exist tomorrow. We have a great opportunity. How many email addresses have we, and I'm going to ask by inquiry so I can ensure that's part of whatever comes back. How many email addresses have we acquired versus, and you'll have to go back and take time to calculate this, versus the cost to be able to send mailings? I want to ensure that if we're collecting all these email addresses, we can use them for great storm events, to contact people about snowbank clearing. Always great that we have a great opportunity. At the same time, if we're not sending out mail, which costs a fortune, by the way, Are we taking advantage of that? So I guess two questions. Do we have a lot of email addresses collected? And what are we doing from a comms point? I know that's not your shop, to be able to engage people to say, yes, we'd prefer not a paper bill, and contact me about all big disasters that are coming our way and what to do, or anything of such. Are we doing that now? I think that's a very key part of, at least if we're going to put residents through some kind of pain, we have some kind of benefit on a cost savings perspective, and definitely on the communications front.
Mr. Mayor, I'll say that one of the biggest, most significant benefits that we've gotten out of the VUT that was probably unintended is more emails and more ways to sort of communicate with people and accurate information in terms of how to get in touch with people. So before the VUT, I think when we looked at our property tax roll, we probably had about 30 to 40% of our property tax roll, which is probably about 350,000 properties, having an email address. Today, in terms of residential units, we have about 99% of those with an email address, and we can communicate with them easily and at any point. For example, when we had the Canada Post strike, we used that as an opportunity to let people know what their options were in terms of making sure that they're aware that bills might be out there, and if they were not on paperless billing, how they would be able to get that information. When we've also seen an increase, significant increase in terms of paperless billing registrations. I think we've moved from about 40% in 2022 to about 75% today. So we only have 25% of our folks that are on paper bills, which is massive savings for mailing, especially now that Canada Post has increased their rates from about, I think it was 91 or 92 cents to about $1.23 this year.
Wow. Yeah, and back in 2010, I think it was on bulk mailings like 9 cents or something. So this is like getting to be a mountain that we're climbing here. So on that though, and back to this question, I just want to make sure we're making use of this list the best way possible. And I know I'm looking at Stuart because there's probably some legal implications here. When it comes to if we have a blackout situation in the city of Ottawa and we have access to all these email addresses at this point, are we able to communicate with all the people that have provided those email addresses and say, urgent situation in Ottawa, here you go? Or have we examined how we could best use what we have to be able to allow us to communicate? If we have the tools to communicate, I'm trying to look for added benefit of, again, putting residents through pain to collect their email addresses, keep them updated. But if they're just sitting there just to send out a VUT, it's kind of pointless. I want to make sure we use this for something good. At this point today, if my scenario plays out, could we use those email addresses? And if not, how do we make sure that that happens?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take that away and review that with finance. Obviously, we'll have to review the consent that the resident has provided to provide that personal information and for what purpose. But it sounds as though there's a willingness on a large percentage of the residents to provide email addresses for that larger convenience to have communications from the city, but certainly happy to review that.
Great, thank you, Stuart. Now, it sounds like no at this point, but I'll work with you. I'll put that in the inquiry because I think that is a key thing. Is if we have this, let's make use of it. Just like we're learning on water billing as well. You know, let's notify people if there's a problem with their water and they have huge amounts of water being used, and we know this information. Let's not use lawyers, and I get it, lawyers rule the world. We all know this, but let's not use that as an excuse. Let's look for proactive solutions to make use if we're putting residents through pain to collect their email addresses, which is gold in my mind. Big tax savings, better way to communicate, and we should find a solution that targets just repeat offenders. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for the answers thus far. I'll just say that when this first started, we did have some complaints come in, but the vast majority was related to the login and the declaration. That's where we were hearing from people. Those have gone down a lot. Just from my own email, what I'm logging as I come in, people become more used to the program. This year was extremely easy. to declare. I mean, it was the easiest year, and it took me I think about 1 minute to get in, do what I had to do and declare. And I've heard the same from others. On Councillor Tierney's point, which I think is a good one, the more emails and ways to communicate. So when is it the My Ottawa accounts that they log into, and then that's how the process works? Could you just clarify on how the process actually works for folks?
So there's two ways to declare online. So if you have a My Service Ottawa account, you can log into that and you can fill out your declarations pretty quick because all your information is generally pre-populated. You just have to validate it and move forward. The second way you can do that, and we have your email address in that case. The second way you can do that, the declaration, is by going to ottawa.ca directly. You'd put in your roll number and your access code, search, and then you'd complete the declaration. In that particular instance, you do have to put in your email address and validate your information. And then we have email addresses, of course, from your My Service Ottawa side, and then the email addresses that are provided to us through ottawa.ca through the declaration process.
And that's great. Did we see? I assume we did see an uptick in the My Service Ottawa accounts as this rolled out, which I think we also use this for some consultation portion as well, I believe, right? Where you log in and you can consult on surveys and things like that. So I assume we saw an increase in the My Service Ottawa accounts, which is beneficial.
Mr. Mayor, we've seen a huge increase, huge, unprecedented increase in My Service Ottawa enrollments since the VUT started. Again, I would say we probably had about 40% of our residents on using online services. And by the way, the VUT, tax, and water in My Shop is not the only thing that is on My Service Ottawa. There's lots of other services that residents do not know about that they can take advantage of in My Service Ottawa. So now we're up to 80% of residents enrolled in My Service Ottawa, and not only do they have access to the tax and water services and VUT declarations, they also have access to all the other services that are available through My Service Ottawa.
Yeah. Okay. No, important point. In 2023, the VUT had generated $14.3 million in revenue. Just remind folks that all goes to our capital affordable housing funds and reserve.
Mr. Mayor, yes, net of costs, which are about $1.2, $1.3 million. All the rest of it goes into the Affordable Housing Fund.
Okay, and just maybe this is for Cyril, but what percentage of that is our, we do a certain amount every budget for capital affordable housing. And what percentage would that amount be of our capital affordable housing, I guess, budget? Is it all, high percentage, I imagine?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So it's about a third plus, depending on the year. So the past 3 years, 23, 24, 25, we've contributed just over 32 million towards affordable housing. Projected to be another 12 or so in 2026. So for this term, there'll be over 40 million contributed to the affordable housing. On an annual basis, we typically are doing, between that 22 to 30 million contribution. We're building our base up 15 from base dollars, and the lion's share of the next part is the VUT component. Okay. So it's a third plus.
Okay, so it's a huge amount, and I mean that funding obviously leverages other provincial and federal funding too. So though the VUT may be taking in, let's say, 12 million after costs, you're leveraging that fund through affordable housing to get other provincial federal dollars. Would that be an accurate statement?
Mr. Mayor, yes. I mean, it gives us the flexibility to leverage other opportunities for sure.
Okay, well, it's a huge financial gain for City of Ottawa, obviously. Those 1,600 units that were returned to the market, we talk a lot about supply in this place. Supply has been a huge talking point on housing. I don't think there's a cheaper way to get this massive amount of supply as this. 1,600 units in 1 year returned to the market. So, you say, I think the average was 250,000 unit, which is low. That's $400.5 million in capital expenditures that would otherwise be required from either developers or, not-for-profits building units. That is massive. So Just want to, those 1,600 units, just to be clear, those are folks that had declared their vacant unit tax and then said, you know what, obviously I have incentive to put some units back on the market. And then we found the next year they put those units back on the market. Is that how that works? How you audit that? Or?
Mr. Mayor, that is correct. So they were vacant in the first year, and in the second year, they were occupied.
Okay.
They were back in the market.
Okay. Fantastic. I understand there's some pain in registering at first, and then that's gotten better over the years. And yes, we hear from some property owners of specific cases, and you've been great about responding to those. But generally, we have people with multiple homes and other people without any homes and not affordable homes. And this is mirroring. Those people still get to keep those homes, but it's encouraging them to put on the market. If they really don't want to, then there's a financial penalty there. But I've seen average market rent go down a little bit in Ottawa. I don't know if it's directly correlated, hard to say. There's a whole bunch of factors, but certainly seen that metric, the 1,600 units back on the market, the My Service Ottawa increase accounts, the ease of doing this now, and all of it going to affordable housing, which gets matched or doubled by other orders of government. My goodness, what a fantastic program. And big congratulations for getting us to this place. And I hope we see it continue and that it goes down over time in terms of the vacant unit declarations. I agree with Councillor Dudas. Let's see that go down. I think with the audits and everything that's happening now, it will. But appreciate the update today. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Joseph and his team for all the work that they have been doing on the VUT. This isn't the most popular thing in the world to do, and you're taking it on, and you're doing a great job. My office has been working with you very carefully. We get unique situations, for sure. We have to look at them, every one of them, because there could be valid reasons, but a lot of times there's just plain empty units, and we have to go after them. It doesn't seem fair. I hear from residents that tell me they have a vacant unit on their street, a vacant home, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see something left empty because somebody can't be bothered to get a tenant because the price of the house will go up anyway. So I appreciate all the work. I wanted to give that shout out to you. As chair of OCH, I know we're making good use of that money for affordable housing. Affordable housing is so necessary. And with these funds, the 14.3 million, that's amazing. We can build a lot with that, and you'll hear about that, about what we're doing. But this is important. And I think that we have to continue on this, and I'm glad we're making it easier. I'm going to pass on a suggestion that came to me from a resident because some of them don't, they're not online. It's great that so many people are online, but is it possible that something could be added to a tax bill so that when they go in person to a bank and they're paying their tax bill, they could also put a declaration on at that time? That was a suggestion that was passed on to me for somebody who doesn't have internet.
Mr. Mayor, we will certainly take that away. Currently, we have options for folks that do not have access to internet. We do include communication that we send in our tax bills or notices that we send to folks that are not on paperless, and we give them a phone number. They can actually call us, and we will walk them through the declaration process. The phone call generally is not more than 3 to 4 minutes with our agents, and we help them, we get it done, and it's good to go. But we will certainly take this away. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Luloff.
Thank you. Colleagues, I want to take this opportunity to speak about this vacant unit tax. I'll be very clear, I don't believe this tax is effective in its current form, and I do believe it places an unnecessary and frustrating burden on homeowners who are already doing the right thing. At its core, the vacant unit tax treats every homeowner as if they are potentially in violation. Every year, thousands of residents must declare their primary residence is, in fact, their home. It's not a targeted policy, it's a broad administrative drag. If our goal is to increase housing supply and reduce long-term vacancy, then our tools need to be precise, credible, and focused on outcomes. Right now, this tax delivers irritation far more reliably than it delivers housing. The first problem is trust and efficiency. We already have access to data that can help identify units that are likely vacant. Utility usage, waste collection patterns, and existing property records can flag properties that warrant follow-up. Instead of requiring universal declarations, we should be using data to identify exceptions and only asking questions when something doesn't add up. That would reduce paperwork for residents, reduce administrative costs for the city, and significantly improve public confidence in the policy. Second, we need to be honest about what the current system actually does. Today, a residential unit can remain vacant indefinitely as long as the owner pays the vacant unit tax or qualifies for an exemption. There's no requirement to bring that unit back into use. That makes this, in practice, a revenue mechanism rather than a supply mechanism. And so if we're serious about housing outcomes, we should move beyond a tax-only approach and consider a true vacancy conversion requirement. After a reasonable period of verified vacancy, an owner would be required to take steps to return the unit to productive use, whether by renting it, selling it, converting it to another approved residential use, or applying for a legitimate hardship exemption. Continued vacancy without action would trigger escalating consequences. That approach focuses on supply, not simply collecting checks. If council believes in a financial lever is necessary, then it should be simpler and better integrated. A graduated property tax rate applied only after verified long-term vacancy would be clearer and far less frustrating than a standalone tax with annual declarations. Most homeowners would never need to interact with it at all. We should also be talking more seriously about incentives. Many vacant units are not being held empty out of indifference or speculation, but because owners are stuck. Renovation costs, legal uncertainty, estate transactions, and fear of becoming accidental landlords are real barriers. Targeted grants, temporary tax relief, and fast-track permitting for owners who commit to bringing units online would likely do more to increase supply than penalties alone. Finally, if any form of declaration is retained, it should not be annual. Declaration should be required only when a property's status changes or on a multi-year cycle with automatic renewal unless flagged. Annual declarations for primary residents are bureaucratic overreach and they undermine trust. In short, the vacant unit tax exists today, creates maximum friction for minimum housing impact. It burdens compliant homeowners, consumes staff time, and fuels public resentment, all while producing limited supply gains. We can do better. We can design a policy that is data-driven, targeted, and focused on outcomes. We can encourage housing supply without assuming bad faith. And we can reduce administrative burden while improving compliance. So at the first opportunity, I urge Council to rethink not just the rate or exemptions, but the structure of this policy altogether. Smarter design will always outperform heavier enforcement. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning to you and colleagues. The Income War Tax Act of 1917 was introduced in Canada as a temporary measure to fund the costs related to the war. And here we are many years later, the income tax remains. It was my understanding that in discussions in this room, we would implement the tax, we would measure the effectiveness of the tax, and once we didn't see once we saw stability with the number of units that were vacant within the city, we would reflect then on disbanding the tax because the overall intent of putting housing supply back in the market would have been realized. And you're always going to have a certain number of vacant units within a city of 1 million people to begin with. I won't articulate all the reasons why my residents dislike this tax because my colleagues have already stated them. There are many. I have, as you know, been on the record in the past being opposed to this tax. I did not campaign on it. And the dilemma is if you speak against the vacant unit tax, you're automatically labeled as against housing. You're automatically labeled as against affordable housing. You don't care about putting supply back in the market, and that is not the case at all. this council, all members of this council, have proven time and time again by our debate and motions that we pass that we very much care about housing. We very much understand there's a housing and homelessness crisis, and we are all collectively trying our best to get as much housing built in the city as possible. And it's fair that some of us don't agree that putting this tax in place, that actually telling people how they use their homes is up to the state. I have strong disagreement and discomfort with that. So my big issue is I was under the understanding that over time, when we saw units back in the market and there was stability with the number of vacant units that existed, we would reflect on, I think this tax has done its part, and we would have an honest discussion about whether or not we disband this tax or not. So my question is about the scope of this review that I believe Councillor Hill mentioned in his comments, Mayor, through you. Could staff just elaborate what type of analysis is going to take place next term of council? What is the scope of that work?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that question. So I would say one of the things I think we look at is we benchmark against other municipalities. We look at what their vacancies rates are. So when we compare ourselves with Toronto and Vancouver, where there's significant vacancy issues and they're implementing the program in the exact same way that we are, we find that our vacancy rate is still higher than what they have. So we know those areas generally, most people would think that they have significant vacancy issues, but our numbers are telling us that we're just as bad. So we're looking to make sure that those numbers continue to go down. So that's going to be one way that we continue to measure the effectiveness of the program. I think the graduated rate will also help bring that number down. And I think once it gets to some acceptable threshold, which we're also going to be looking at, then I think those conversations would be in order.
Okay, and Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, Councillor, I'll add to that as well. It's important too that we're only going into our third year of data. So like any program, and you've heard me talk about it before, 3 years really starts to build enough data to start to think about trends and predictability. So really it's about getting the data in place. We've been, kind of through 1-2 full cycles from the audit perspective. We've also been working very close with each member in terms of improving the program, identifying new exemptions where we can. So I think it's important, it's a great discussion, but it's important that staff will follow the direction of council, obviously. But we're continuously working with each and every one of you to see how we can improve this process. The declaration process is much more improved than what it was previously. The communication channels are open. We now have a good set of data, probably need a bit more data to start making more informed decisions so we can report back with that data analysis. So then council has the right level of information to make those decisions or direct staff on the next step. So that's kind of where we're going, and that data is really rich, and we have a good set of data. Now we just need to start getting a bit more and analyze those trends.
I appreciate that. My last question is just when you process people's property tax payments, how many people cut an additional check to the city and state how they would like the additional funds allocated? Do people write in and say, I want to contribute an extra $100 or $1,000 for housing, or I really want to see my local library have additional resources? Surely in this discussion of a housing and homelessness emergency, surely there are members of council who provide additional funds to the city to allocate for this purpose. How many people do that on an annual basis?
Mr. Mayor, we don't see that often or at all. Generally, most people will pay what we've asked them to pay. And we don't really have any program in place. I know we launched the donate button last year that allows people to contribute to the bottom line. So there is a path there to sort of build some mechanism to do that. But currently there is no mechanism in place. So generally people will not send us any more money.
So
than
a city of 1 million people, no one voluntarily is giving extra money to the city to allocate towards the crises that we've identified. Just to be, I just want to clarify, that's what you're saying.
Mr. Mayor, I think there was 5 people donated to Donate Ottawa, so $165. So I would say $1 million less those 5 people. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just wanted to pass on some of the conversation I'm having with the Hindenburg Community Association, Cheryl Parrott, this morning as this discussion goes on. I think many of us are aware that in the years leading up to the pandemic, there was a significant thrust right across North America of very small investors speculating on real estate, not in the interest of providing housing, but to create revenue streams for themselves. Everything kind of fell apart with the pandemic. It became very challenging to build housing. And as a consequence, there were multiple buildings right across Hintonburg that were simply sitting vacant. Landlords, new owners had worked with a very friendly landlord-tenant board to evict the tenants who were renting affordably in those structures, and now the buildings were sitting vacant. And I know Cheryl her story was part of why many of us under Mayor Watson determined that we wanted to move down the path of a vacant unit tax. When I look at the report that is in front of us today for reception, I take away the message, even after just 3 years, and message heard, Mr. Treasurer, with respect to the paucity of data thus far, but message heard, the tax is working. I'm just listening to Cheryl here. There are at least 10 developments at the moment in Hintonburg on buildings that were empty for years. Many have already been redeveloped, more in the process. 2 empty units on Carruthers are now almost completed into 16. Another single unit on Armstrong is 12 units with the for rent sign just posted. Another unit on Armstrong was 2 units on a large property. It's 33 units now fully rented. All of these buildings were rented or vacant for years. It took the vacant unit tax to get those stalled landowners to redevelop their property and put them back in the service of housing. I'm looking forward to continuing to see the results in the years to come with respect to getting even more of the vacant properties that are in my ward redeveloped or put back on the market. But the reason is clear, or the results to my mind are very clear. The tax is working to get more housing in the market in the midst of a housing crisis. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And despite that sounding like a debate that would lead to a vote, there is no vote to be had this morning. Let's move on to item 6.1 on the agenda, which is the ITS update. And Vice Chair Kitts, I believe you have a motion to waive the rules of procedure to add this to the agenda.
I do. Thank you. Be it resolved that the Finance and Corporate Services Committee approve that the rules of procedure be waived subject to subsection 83(4)A of the procedure bylaw to receive a staff presentation on the 2026 ITS update.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kitts. Is that carried? Okay, I'll turn it over to staff for our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the committee. So again, as a reminder, as a commitment for this term of council, we'll come back on a quarterly basis in terms of updates around all things IT. This time of year, we like to come forward and provide a little bit of an update in terms of some of the accomplishments in the prior year, 2025, give a little bit of a corporate view in terms of some of the bigger projects that we're working on this year. And of course, we'll touch on some of the initiatives around AI as well in this presentation, as we did back during the budget process. Before I hand it over to staff, I also like to remind members of the committee, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. I like to tell my IT team, keeping the lights on. The team here, when we show up here every committee and council, Joss, Pat, Dave, up in the cube there, make sure all these laptops are working, et cetera. So there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that we just don't see. Our data centers, our connectivity, it's quite the matrix of a system. So a big kudos to the team that you don't see. We don't generally talk a lot about those functions. We tend to focus on the bigger projects, the shiny, fun, new, innovative stuff. So I just want to give a little shout out to the team that keeps this place running on a daily basis. So with that, I'll pass over to Sandra and the team to walk you through a presentation.
Thank you, Cyril. Good morning, Chair and committee members. Je suis heureux d'être ici avec mes collègues Jason
I'm
Barney
happy to
and
be
Morgan
here with
Tam
my colleague to present the update on the work that's underway in ITS.
I'd like to begin with a quick snapshot of what ITS delivers every day across the organization. ITS is the city's technology backbone, providing a secure, consistent, modern environment that supports every line of business. Our teams deliver support, maintain our infrastructure, manage the full application lifecycle, and ensure compliance with legislative and security requirements. Notre rôle est de fournir une technologie fiable.
Our role is to provide a reliable TI service for every municipal service.
Helping them adopt new tools, modernize processes, and improve service delivery. And as new technologies like AI and automation emerge, our teams are ready. ITS is building the foundation to adapt these responsibility and effectively across the organization. Next slide, please. This is ITS by the numbers. The numbers I outline on this slide highlight the scale of the work that ITS supports every single day. Last year, we handled more than 148,000 internal services requests and more than 21,500 city tech appointments, both in person and virtual. A strong reflection of how deeply integrated our teams are in city day-to-day operations. We continue to support a large-scale and complex digital ecosystem, including approximately 200 applications across departments, 22,000 active accounts, and almost 4,000 mobile devices. This work is what allows the organization to operate efficiently and focus on delivering frontline services to residents. I want to highlight the incredible professionalism of our ITS staff. Their adaptability, expertise, and commitment make all of this very possible. Our teams constantly aim to deliver high-quality service while progressing major modernization initiatives. Next slide, please. 2025 was also a year of meaningful delivery for ITS that we trust residents feel in real, tangible ways. In 2025, we advanced an exceptional, robust portfolio of work as 52 projects were successfully completed. The full breadth of these initiatives is substantial, so for today's presentation, I'll just highlight a few of them, accomplishments that best demonstrate the scale, the innovation, and the measurable impacts of our efforts. Working with our colleagues in Service Ottawa, bylaw and regulatory services and revenue services, we implemented a new administrative penalty system to modernize how parking infractions and permits are managed. The system supports the full parking lifecycle from enforcement, payment, dispute resolution, and on-street parking permits, all through a more streamlined digital service. For residents, this means faster resolutions of parking tickets, simpler online interactions, and fewer delays. It also improves efficiency for city staff, helping ensure consistent, timely, and transparent enforcement. The land management solution, working with our colleagues in building code, planning, ROW, heritage, and urban design and committee of adjustment, the first phase of the land management solution went live, replacing technology that was more than 20 years old. Residents can now apply for permits, booking instructions, upload documents, and make payments online from any device, saving time and reducing the need for in-person visits. This has already streamlined our workflow for building code services and sets the stage for better digital experience across planning, ROW, heritage, and the Committee of Adjustments and bylaw services. Working with our colleagues in infrastructure and water services, solid waste, and revenue services, we completed the migration of the solid waste application, replacing a legacy system with a more modern and reliable platform. The new system improves the performance and reliability of tools used by frontline crews and service contractors. While this work is largely behind the scenes, it results in better services delivery, more accurate information, and a smoother experience for residents when submitting service requests for tracking waste-related issues. These accomplishments demonstrate not only technology progress, but also real improvements in how residents access services, receive information, and interact with the city, while also highlighting the strength of our team as trusted partners helping departments move forward. With that, I'm going to pass things over to Jason Barney, who will walk you through ITS projects for the upcoming year in 2026.
Thank you, Sandro. Following on last year's accomplishments, I'd like to highlight a few projects we're working on this year. Next slide, please. À la suite des réalisations de l'année dernière,
Following last year's accomplishments, I'd like to present some projects that we're working on this year.
My colleague Morgan will be providing an update on those projects. Sandro mentioned LMS Release 1, and we're now moving forward on LMS Release 2, Release 2 is the next major phase of replacement of the legacy map system and focuses on a broad set of planning, development, right-of-way, heritage, urban design, and committee of adjustment services. It will deliver noticeable improvements for residents, builders, consultants, and property owners with faster, more transparent development processes. Digital intake and circulation reduces timelines and gives applicants clearer visibility into the status of their files. Online search and tools make it simpler for residents to review applications and participate in public processes. Another transformational project is the business licensing and online payment project, leveraging the same enterprise platform as LMS. It replaces the legacy system, which relies on paper-based processes and in-person counter interactions. The new system will include an online portal to apply and pay, avoiding or reducing in-person visits. Automated workflow in the system will improve turnaround for inspections, approvals, and renewals, ultimately providing improved service to businesses and residents. Next, Service Ottawa and 3-in-1 enhancements. This work is being delivered jointly with Service Ottawa through the CX360 project to improve the entire service request experience and reduce callbacks and escalations. We're improving how services are labeled and organized so residents can quickly find the right option. After a request is submitted, we are aiming to provide clearer, more consistent status updates on My Service Ottawa and the mobile app, moving beyond simple open-close messages. Overall, this project ensures a coordinated, resident-focused design of Service Ottawa's digital experience, giving residents better information upfront and reducing unnecessary follow-ups. The Election Support Project represents one of the city's most complex and collaborative efforts, drawing on the expertise of about 1/3 of ITS staff to ensure the election processes run smoothly and results appear within minutes of polls closing, highlighting the strength and reliability of the city's technology and processes. Major contributors to this success are the election management system and a suite of public-facing elections applications. The elections management system is the core. It manages all the data for candidates, voters, addresses, building and voting locations, workers and their assignments, and training sessions. The public-facing elections applications provide residents with easy access to essential tools such as checking and updating voter information, viewing candidates, locating voting places, submitting worker applications, and requesting mail-in ballots. These applications reduce manual processes and make election participation more efficient and equitable. The scale of this effort involves thousands of election workers, hundreds of thousands of ballots, and hundreds of accessible voting locations, all coordinated through the Elections Office and ITS teams. The IT Service Management Project is transforming how IT operates by replacing an aging system with a modern ITSM platform that streamlines incident management, service requests, and workflow automation for critical systems. It strengthens our operational foundation by delivering accurate data through automated discovery, giving us real-time view of complex interdependent systems with the aim of reducing outages, speeding up diagnosis, and enabling smarter change decisions. Lastly, the city is on a multi-year journey to renew our enterprise resource planning system, integrating core business functions into a unified system, including finance and accounting, human capital management, real estate and supply chain management, and enterprise asset management. The city's ERP platform is SAP, and it's approaching end of mainstream support by end of 2027, creating a pressing need to renew the city's core technology ecosystem. In 2026, the city will implement 3 cloud-based releases. Employee Central Foundations, which is the core HR platform that centralizes employee and organization data and supports integrated end-to-end HR processes. Success Factors, which is the learning management system enabling improved tracking, delivery, and management of employee training. And lastly, the introduction of S/4HANA to modernize core ERP functions that will transform processes, core data, reporting, and user experience. These releases will deliver streamlined processes, real-time data and analytics, improved user experience, and a scalable foundation for future evolution. I've talked about 7 projects, but these are only a small sample of the projects currently underway for 2026. J'ai mentionné 7 projets, mais ce n'est pas qu'une modeste aperçu de
I didn't
l'ensemble
mention 7 projects, but it's only part of what we're actually doing for 2026.
Over to Morgan to provide additional updates.
Next slide, please. My team manages several of the city's digital platforms like Ottawa.ca, My Service Ottawa, SharePoint, and Dynamics 365. We help drive digital modernization across the organization, working closely with different service areas to make sure our technology truly supports how the city operates. Our main goal is to make processes better, strengthen digital services, and deliver tools that make work easier for staff and improve services for residents. In the past, many of our legacy applications needed their own specialized support teams, which led to patchwork of aging systems. Now we're moving towards a unified approach, where our teams are trained to work on modern platforms such as Dynamics 365. This makes support simpler, more consistent, and easier to scale. We're cutting down on maintenance demands and reducing technical debt, allowing our teams to focus more on innovation instead of spending so much time to keeping old systems running. Just as important, we're investing in our people. We're building up the skills needed to support and make the most of these modern platforms. This way, we can keep growing with the platforms and continuing to provide excellent service as the city evolves. Next slide. Here's where we stand today. Dynamics 365 has become a pillar in the city's push for digital modernization. Our team has delivered over 20 Dynamics 365 solutions, supporting over 1,000 active users and facilitating upwards of 2.5 million transactions on the platform so far. Dynamics 365 is now integrated into many departments, such as Emergency Protective Services, Finance and Corporate Services, Ottawa Public Library, Public Works, and so on. This growth reflects a multi-year transformation journey, one that steadily accelerates as more programs see the value of standardized, scalable solutions. Each new implementation builds on the last, creating momentum and strengthening the overall ecosystem. And most importantly, this isn't the finish line. ITS continues to collaborate with service areas across the organization, enhancing existing solutions and to keep pace with evolving needs and maximize value. Currently, we have 3 new Dynamics 365 solutions in development, each tailored to support critical business functions and further expand our enterprise capabilities. This cycle of delivery, refinement, and expansion brings us closer to a truly connected modern digital ecosystem, one that enables the city to adapt quickly, scale efficiently, and continuously improve services for both residents and staff. Furthermore, as data is captured and connected within this ecosystem, it becomes an essential foundation for actionable intelligence. These shared high-quality data sets will empower the future use of AI to analyze patterns, recommend actions, and automate routine tasks across our services, driving smarter decisions and optimize efficiency. Next slide.
Over the last few weeks, ITS and the City Manager's Office have been working in close partnership, developing a comprehensive AI framework to harness artificial intelligence responsibly and effectively for the city. We have a clear vision guiding this work. We will leverage AI responsibly to augment staff capabilities and deliver smarter, faster, and more inclusive services for residents. As part of this framework, we will be expanding the availability of AI and automation solutions across the organization, allowing us to capitalize on our current investments, which I will speak to more later in this presentation. We will also be developing a structured prioritization model and roadmap, ensuring we focus on the highest impact initiatives. This includes defining clear success metrics to measure business value, such as accuracy of AI results, time saved in workflows, and improvements to service delivery. The framework will also outline how we intend to support our staff so they feel empowered by the tools and have the skills to use them successfully and responsibly. To realize that objective, we've already begun to ramp up our training, communications, and support programs around AI. We are developing a comprehensive AI toolkit, essentially a one-stop AI hub for staff on internal SharePoint site that clearly explains what approved tools are available, how to access them, when to use them, and how to benefit from them. Finally, we will be doing more outreach to city staff in the coming months, including an AI event that will showcase capabilities and highlight how staff are already using AI, promote the adoption of approved AI tools across departments, and gather feedback and new ideas. Importantly, this isn't the last time you'll hear about this work. We are committed to reporting back on our progress on the AI framework to the Agile Government Working Group, making sure our AI work stays aligned with Council's priorities and the public's expectations. Next slide, please. As I mentioned at the outset of my remarks, in the past year, our automation and AI team in ITS has delivered dozens of AI and automation solutions that are already streamlining city operations. In fact, 49 automation and AI projects were completed in 2025, and I'd like to highlight a few. The first is the OPH Media Bank AI photo tagging. Ottawa Public Health's communications team manages a media library of thousands of photos. Previously, staff had to manually tag and catalog each image with keywords for search purposes. In 2025, we deployed an AI vision tool that analyzes each new photo and automatically generates descriptive tags and captions. The tangible benefit is a major reduction in manual effort and instant access by searching with keywords, freeing staff to focus on content and messaging rather than file management. Moreover, this solution has high reusability across departments, using the same AI capability to manage media libraries, multiplying the citywide efficiency gains at little extra cost. The second is the Transportation Master Plan AI survey analysis. Gathering public input is crucial for city planning, but analyzing large volumes of feedback can be extremely time-consuming. As part of the Transportation Master Plan public consultation, the city received thousands of open-ended survey responses from residents. To help staff make sense of this data, we used an AI-powered text analysis tool developed by IT. The AI produced a summary of key insights, something that would have taken staff many weeks if done manually. Ultimately, this project showcases how AI can enhance our public engagement process, providing faster, data-driven insights from residents' input, which leads to more responsive and informed policy development. This solution has been used for other survey analyses, including the water rate review and older adult plan, saving hundreds of hours, and is a repeatable solution moving forward. Third is the Ottawa.ca AI assistant. We have built and are now testing a robust AI assistant built on city data. The opportunities include anything from HR policies and IT help to answering questions about zoning or bylaws. It only draws on trusted, up-to-date knowledge sources, and we are measuring its effectiveness carefully using a combination of internal testing with business experts, along with an innovative approach using an AI tool that assesses how grounded, relevant, and thorough the responses are. Although still in testing, this project is on track to roll out internally this quarter. Following the internal launch, it is intended to be included on Ottawa.ca as a chatbot for residents. The fourth example I'd like to highlight is the onboarding and training AI bot currently being developed. Our Revenue Services Department, which handles programs like property tax and water billing, regularly onboards new employees who must learn complex processes and systems. The AI bot will function like a 24/7 digital coach. A new staff member can ask it questions such as, how do I look up a tax account in the system, or what's the process to set up a pre-authorized payment plan for a resident? And it will provide step-by-step guidance drawn from training material, standard operating procedures, and policy documents. The benefits we anticipate are faster ramp-up and more self-sufficient learning for new employees. Once proven in revenue services, this AI can be replicated for onboarding in any business area across the city. These four initiatives illustrate how the city is practically applying AI to deliver measurable value. And notably, these successes are not one-offs. They form part of a repeatable model where one department benefits, others can quickly follow. As we continue through 2026, we will build on these achievements. Next slide, please. I've mentioned some metrics through specific projects, but just to highlight, over the last 12 months through various AI and automation projects, we've seen over 58,000 hours saved, 645,000 manual steps automated. One of our core solutions is Copilot. We offer Tech Bite sessions on various topics, and one delivered recently was a session entitled Empower Your Workflow Using Copilot Effectively, Securely, and Responsibly. It was attended by 380 staff, and over 130 have since watched the recording. We continue to see increased adoption of Copilot in the organization. In the past month alone, we've seen a 3.3% increase of active users and a 6.6% increase of active daily users in the same time frame, showing that staff are using the tools and using them daily. In closing, AI amplifies the incredible expertise city staff possess. They bring the skills, judgment, and deep business knowledge that makes this organization run, and AI is a tool that supports them, helping them make smarter, faster, and better decisions with greater impact. Merci.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and a great presentation. It's good to see how far advanced we are. Back in the day in 2010 when I got on, it took a lot to move people, and it seems like we're moving very much in the right direction, so thank you. When I look at things like 311, I think that's the critical one. Where are we on that path for implementation of a new system? And I know the clerks is heavily involved in that, so as well as our 311 center.
Yeah, through the mayor. So that project's being led out of my shop at Service Ottawa. So we're labeling it CX360. So we're working closely with a couple of departments, forestry, solid waste, bylaw, in terms of several different improvements. So we're really rolling out multiple small incremental improvements regularly. Because again, if this was a big bang type deployment, it would take a long time. So we're actually, I think we're coming back to the Agile Working Group either later this month with an update on some of that. You just saw a communication release recently as well from Michelle in terms of a check-in on that. So we're continuously working forward on that in terms of improving it. The dashboards we sent communication yesterday is another example of releasing the dashboards to each member in terms of the service requests as well. So it's a journey, but it's going to be incremental the entire way through.
That's great. And this is a big move for sure, because the public doesn't realize we don't actually see the 311 tickets that come in. They're like, I sent in a ticket. And at the end of the day, unless they check that box for communications, we'll get their email address, but we don't know that they've reported whatever the case may be, their garbage wasn't picked up or a plow didn't go by. So the more that we can put that on the table and have the opportunity to be able to see or be part of what's happening, I think is good. When it comes to AI is great buzzword. It's the word of the year. In my role with FCM, I'll be meeting with Minister Evan Solomon, their AI minister, quite a bit. And I know our city is a pretty leading edge. We're using it in our traffic services. We're starting to move ahead. I think, and again, my background is I was 15 years IT. I'm SAP, ABAP certified, Oracle certified, Microsoft certified, you name it under the sun. I was part of the banking sector and government, you name it. So I have a great understanding of the technology, and the technology is great. One of the concerns I have, whether it's SharePoint or Dynamics, it's the same thing, it's the same engine, is workflow. And you can have as much AI as you want, unless you have the workflow in place, it's a challenge. So, for example, if someone's on leave, for example, and someone's fulfilling that role within a department, the system is capable. This is the whole goal of SharePoint and Dynamics, is to be able to kick it to the next level after so many days of unresponsiveness or email back saying that person is off. My understanding for union roles, we don't have that in place right now, where it could kick it to the next levels. Is this something that we're going to look at? Because I think this is the key to efficiency, is to say if somebody's off or gone for 2 weeks, a month, that will go to their fallback person for follow-up, just to make sure that we can be more effective. I don't know who would like to speak to that.
Mr. Mayor, so I can speak to it. So we do have that in place in a number of different flows, if you will. I'll use something as simple as an invoice, approving an invoice. So there's a little bit of a matrix in terms of the approval flow.
Sure.
And if I take some time off and don't delegate that to someone after a few queues, Wendy's going to get a lot of emails from me. So we have that process there. What I will say is that's where we're looking at in terms of leveraging some AI in terms of some of these transactional requests that come through. And I'll use a simple example because I think you can easily relate to it. But we get a lot of requests for records of employment. So today that request comes through our HR payroll service center. Someone's actually taking that request, filling that out and sending it back. That's an area where we're looking at leveraging AI, where that can be done seamlessly without fingers to keyboards. So those types of scenarios will be there. But to your other point as well, as we build this out, we need to make sure that the workflow. So it's not about just AI. AI is really, another part of an automation journey. It's another process of the business process continuum, if you will. So AI is just another piece of the bigger puzzle of automation and business process improvement. So all those things are being done, in parallel.
And that's great. That's what I was looking for, is because AI is a great buzzword, but without the underpinnings, it's kind of useless. It's just great for making cool little pictures and things. You want to actually make use of the engine. So it's good to hear. I'd like to know a little bit more, and if there's an opportunity to be part of that agile group, I'd certainly relish the opportunity just for additional third eyes or feedback. My last one's related to Engage Ottawa. Very successful. I think that's one of the tools I think that is great for collecting, harvesting information, getting people engaged, which is something you want to do. But I asked recently about zoning, and I said, can you give a breakdown of how many people in my ward, actually had a complaint about or a concern about zoning? And they said, but we don't break it down that way. I was kind of surprised by that. Is this not, do we not track by ward right now who comes in through our Engage Ottawa process? I'm not looking for specifics because, of course, again, lawyers will say, well, that was provided to the city, not to you. I'm just looking for metrics, which are not protected under the same element of confidentiality. Is what we currently don't do is track by ward. So I can say, you know, residents of Ward 11, there was 500 people that were upset about the zoning. And in Councillor Curry's area, there was 30 because, you know, people just loved the Canada Lakes golf course. So, you know, do we not track this information right now?
Mr. Mayor, so the source that would have to be, we would have to ask for, you know, what ward, we would have to ask that question. So right now that's not structured into the part of the request, if you will. Much like our 311 requests, a lot of times we get calls in, but we don't actually get, you know, we don't ask for what ward you're calling from, et cetera. That's certainly something we can explore in terms of another level of request to give us. So we would need to be given that source so then we can report back on it.
But surely they provide their postal code on Engage Ottawa, and that automatically hives out that's how we base everything for breakdown by ward. I know there's some postal regions that are slightly off, but a majority of which we figure out where people live. Is this something we can't look at including so we can actually have a better picture? If we have 1,000 people answer online survey Engage Ottawa and 99% are coming from 3 wards, that's not a true representation of the city. And I think we have to be able to get to that point. So is this something we can't look at achieving?
Councillor, happy to take that away and then bring it back in terms of the data that we do get and how we can present that back to you. So just give us a little bit of time and we'll circle back.
I look forward to that. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Dudas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. AI is changing everything about how we live, how we work, how we do things. It's very interesting to hear what we're doing as a municipality to incorporate that into our workflow. I am wondering though, there's estimations that, you know, AI is evolving at a breakneck speed. Computational power is doubling almost every 6 months or so. How do we intend to either continue to evolve our technologies in-house? How are we staying on the edge of that in terms of the AI that we're adapting to using, and how are we going to bring our staff along for that? Because it's very reassuring to hear that you had 300 plus, you know, staff at this training session. I'm sure many more, but it's going to constantly be changing and requiring new education, new information for our team. So how do we stay involved in that at the edge that we need to be on?
Mr. Mayor, I think that's the importance of the framework that's being developed with the city manager's office and the IT team in terms of leveraging the tools we have in the stack. We talk about the stack, Microsoft Office being our main stack. You're right, the technology is changing faster than the content can keep up with. So for us, we need to make sure we're being diligent with the core services, the core data that we have, so we can be, you know, leveraging it. If we're going to continuously try and get ahead of it, it will create a lot of spin, and I don't think you're going to get the outputs that's intended to do. So it's very important that that framework helps guide how and when and where we go with AI and how we can leverage it. Obviously, focused on core services as the main element of the benefits of it, if you will, if that makes sense.
I think, you know, once again, AI has its opportunities. It has its scary edge to it. You know, we don't want to adapt too quickly and then have any privacy issues. I think that there's a lot of opportunity with it in terms of not just efficiencies, but also making sure that our staff are very much aware of how they can leverage it so we can get out of the business of, marking off papers and actually get our teams to be doing the more brain work in terms of letting computers do what we don't need to be doing. So I'm very excited to hear about where we're at. And I continue to be interested in where we go with that as long as we stay on top of it. Public entities don't have a history of being too quick on staying on top of things, but we will be, right? Go team. All right. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to express my thanks to Cyril and his team for the work they have been doing. I know I'm a little bit more on the inside track than perhaps council is generally on some of the work that our teams are doing. I think it's important to highlight some of the incremental benefits that have been outlined in the presentation. AI isn't going to be a one big solution. I think it's going to be, to our treasurer's points, incremental wins that we experience across the corporation. Also recognizing that council passed a motion unanimously at budget time put forward by myself and Councillor King to provide that flexibility for our public service to start leveraging some of these tools, both what we can develop internally and any external solutions that may exist. My only question to the general manager might be, is there anything more that we can do as committee and council to support staff's efforts to continue to develop our AI solutions and help bring our staff along, to Councillor Dudas's point?
Mr. Mayor, it's a great question, but I think the support that we've gotten, especially from yourself and other members of council and the Agile Working Group, with the framework coming into play, you see it in the numbers, the uptake in the last month alone. I think the momentum has now started. I think that's the reality of it, and I think that's going to keep going. You're aware of a number of projects that are in flight that are close to being ready to push out. I'll put it that way. We'll be back to the Agile Working Group with that as well this month in terms of updates on a couple of those scenarios. So I think that it's there. I think the momentum is rolling, and there's no sign of that slowing down. So I think we're in a good spot. You're going to continue to see some good rollouts this year and some within the next 2 months. So I think we're on the right track for sure.
No, thank you very much. And my last comment would be, for anyone who has some hesitation or reservation around adopting these new technologies, as our colleagues know, Mr. Mayor, my office has tried to adopt many different AI solutions to increase how we serve the residents in my ward. We have never been busier, and we've never had more solutions at our fingertips to help serve the residents of Ward 21. And I think we can extrapolate that success across the corporation. I don't think our employees should be worried about their positions or the work that they do. AI is about freeing up our human resources to do higher value tasks and move them off of those lower value repetitive tasks. So again, very pleased to see that the work that's happening. I think our teams are doing a fantastic job, and I know there's a lot of interest within the public service to keep exploring this, and certainly I'll be a support on the way. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Brown, can you just confirm that it's actually you and not an AI bot, please?
I can confirm. If you believe me, I can confirm it's actually me.
Thank you. Super. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thank you again for that presentation. Is that received? Thank you. Let's move on to item 7.1, the Ottawa Paramedic Service West Deployment Facility. I want to welcome all the folks from the Ottawa Paramedic Service who are here today and have learned more about the VUT than they ever wanted to know. Thank you for your patience. Great to have you here. And am I turning it over to you, Ryan? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, members of the committee. While I wait for the presentation to load up, I'll just mention that I'm joined today by Chief Pierre Poirier from the Ottawa Paramedic Service, as well as Cyril and Joanne Graham, our Chief Procurement Officer. The City of Ottawa has experienced significant growth over the past 2 decades. In addition to population growth and an aging demographic, today's paramedics deliver an expanded scope of clinical care, new community paramedicine programs, alternate mental health response, and specialized emergency services that did not exist when our current headquarters was built back in 2005. La ville d'Ottawa a connu une croissance notable
Ottawa has been growing a
au
lot.
cours des 2 dernières décennies.
This is what we've observed over the last 2 decades.
Et du
On
vieillissement
top
de la
of the
population, les paramédics
population
offrent
growth
des soins cliniques
and
avancés
aging
et un
demographic, we are
programme
offering clinical
médecine
programs
communautaire qui n'existait
as well
pas
as
quand
community
notre
services
quartier
that didn't
général a
existed
été
when
construit.
we've built our headquarters.
Council has responded to these pressures. Since 2005, more than 450 new positions and 80 vehicles have been added to the Ottawa Paramedic Service, including significant investments made during this term of council. These investments have strengthened our emergency response across the city. However, these investments have also brought us to a critical point. Our current headquarters on Don Reed Drive was designed to support approximately 330 staff and 80 vehicles. Today, it supports more than 900 staff and 160 vehicles. The facility is operating well beyond its capacity, and there is no practical way to expand it. Building a West deployment facility directly supports Council's strategic priority to improve emergency response times and the strategic objective of aligning emergency response with community needs. Ensuring that paramedics have the infrastructure to deploy resources where and when they are needed is essential to meeting increased community service demand across the growing city. Next slide, please. Over the past several years, staff have worked with internal partners and external advisors to assess all viable options. Based on that work, the report before you today recommends proceeding with procurement using a design, bid, build, finance, maintain model to deliver a West deployment facility for the Ottawa Paramedic Service. One of the key benefits of this model is that up to 50% of eligible project costs are reimbursed by the province through the existing Land Ambulance Service Grant. This is consistent with the cost-sharing model used for hiring new paramedic staff or purchasing new fleet. Taking the design, build, the design, build, finance, maintain approach also maximizes the city's eligibility for this funding. This same model was used for the headquarters on Don Reed and has proven successful as the facility remains in very good condition more than 20 years later. Building the West deployment facility will enhance public safety, improve emergency response in the city's fastest growing areas, strengthen climate and operational resilience, and ensure that paramedics have the space and infrastructure they need to safely serve a growing city, now and into the future. Le centre de déploiement du secteur ouest
The center on the west side will improve the safety, the public safety, as well as the emergency intervention in this area. The paramedics will have the space as well as the infrastructure needed to serve the population now and in the future.
I want to personally thank staff from Infrastructure Services, Finance and Corporate Services, the Real Estate Team and Strategic Initiatives, Recreation, Culture and Facility Services, and Legal Services for their collaboration on a file of this scale and complexity. With that, I'll now turn the presentation over to Chief Poirier, who will walk you through some of the project details in more depth. Over to you, Chief.
Next slide, please. Monsieur le maire, c'est un grand plaisir de commencer
Mr.
le
Mayor,
processus.
it's a great pleasure to start the process that follows the policy on public and private partnerships for a new headquarters for paramedic services in Ottawa.
I'm proud today to talk about a new facility for the Ottawa Paramedic Service. We've outgrown the existing facility, and I'd like to highlight a few items here. Regarding financing, le quartier général aujourd'hui, c'était
The
construit en
headquarters
2005.
today was built in 2005.
Un partenariat public-privé
It was a
qui était
P3
bien
project
reçu de la ville.
that was well received
On
by
a
the
une
city.
subvention du ministère
We
de
had
Santé
a
de
grant
50%
from
de nos coûts.
the
Puis
Department of
récemment,
Health for
dans le plan
50%
de gestion des
of our
actifs de
cost,
2025,
and we have an
l'état de cet établissement, c'était en très bon
asset management plan that's working very
Part of the items
well.
I'd like to highlight is the fact that The Ottawa Paramedic Service operates under a hub and spoke model, that every paramedic today starts and ends their shift at 2465 Don Reed Drive. And there's a significant time as the city has grown in terms of our ability to deploy appropriately. You know, when we think of the timeline to drive from the East End location to Kinburn or to Stittsville, it's significant. By adding a second facility, that will significantly reduce our deployment times, which actually also has an important secondary component, which improves our service delivery time to our community. Also, in terms of how this operates, the current facility is 100,000 square feet. It's absolutely served us very well. It has a level 3 decontamination. If you go back to the early 2000s and the anthrax scares and the significant issues related to prevention and control of illness and MRSA and different bugs or illnesses that are present, that we have a decontamination facility that allows us to appropriately clean our vehicles so that they're ready for the next call. We have secure storage for all of our equipment. The garage space is about 50,000 square feet. And the building that was designed in 2005 met post-disaster requirements. And it was also one of the first LEED certified buildings in the city. And to this date, it has served us extremely well. I'd like to highlight just a few things in terms of A, how we currently work, B, what have we done to mitigate over the last 20 years in terms of our capacity issues, and the change in the work that paramedics have. The hub and spoke is really an important design. It's very efficient, it's cost effective, and it has absolutely served the city very well for 20 years. But now with the city over 1 million people, things have changed significantly. Traffic delays, traffic times are impacting our city and our ability to respond. So this is one part that we've had to address. In terms of what we've done to mitigate, and this is an important piece, we've looked at nearby facilities in the area. There haven't been any. We've looked at looking at adjusting the size of the facility in terms of adding a third story. That is not possible in terms of the current facility and the way it was structured in 2005. In terms of our staff, we've gone, as General Manager Perot said, we've gone from over 300 staff to over 900 staff. What we had at one time was full lockers for all staff. We're taking all the lockers out and putting half lockers in. We've moved out our public education, which used to be in our facility, to a leased facility nearby. So we've been making adjustments. We've removed all the green space essentially from the land that we're already on to increase our parking. And today we have staff personnel in their personal protective gear that is being stored in the garage space, which is absolutely not ideal. And it isn't just a few. I think just yesterday, the day before, I counted over 90 bags in terms of staff equipment that were being stored there. Next slide, please. So this is a design that's being proposed for 4061 Don Reed Drive. Sorry, my apologies, Strandherd Drive in Barrhaven. We've been working with an architectural firm just to do preliminary design elements. And what has happened is significant in terms of, I mentioned earlier, is that our deployment times have increased significantly, which is affecting our service delivery. If we go back to strategic council initiatives, response times, emergency response times are an important item within the council, and we're trying to be respectful of that. And this is an important addition to our service delivery. So why was this site chosen? And this goes back several years, and I'll come back to a timeline, all these elements. But one was, this was a city-owned piece of land, recognizing the cost of land and how valuable that is. We did a site analysis, a detailed analysis of different possible sites throughout the west end of the city. This site scored the highest. We looked at our operational need to balance service delivery. We looked at the utilities. So there was land that might have been farther out, but without utilities, that would add the significant cost in terms of accessing water, power, internet, all of those elements. So we want to be within the city boundary and the access to utilities, and also in terms of ingress and egress was very important to us because that has an impact on our time and our response and our deployment. That this facility on Strandherd was on an arterial road, which provides excellent access. And with some of the changes that are proposed to McKinney-Casey, that'll be an excellent option for our service in terms of our deployment in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Just in terms of our timeline, this started a number of years ago. In 2017, we knew that our facility was at capacity, nearing capacity, that we were already starting to stack staff like cordwood. We initiated the project. We got council support for initial funding to start the process of doing due diligence work for a new facility. In 2020, we did an expression of interest where we were looking at, is there an appetite of business interests who would be willing to engage in a new facility for the Ottawa Paramedic Service. There were 7 interested consortia that were willing to consider this in different various forms, and we were excited by the fact that there is an interest in the community. In 2022, we had a request for proposal to look at financial risk and value for money assessments and a business case. We identified our site in 2023, which I just spoke to. 2024, we did an analysis of 11 different procurement models based on a class estimate or cost estimates that we had done for the preliminary design work. All of these elements are following the policy guidelines, procedures with respect to P3s within the city. And just this year or last year now, we've been doing all of the back-end work to support a new facility in terms of environmental assessment, the geotechnical assessment, traffic analyses, rail analyses, communications analysis in terms of the radio towers that used to be nearby from Rogers. And all of these elements are kind of coming together now at this point where we're coming to council following the process of the P3 policy. We did a threat risk analysis, and we've done financial risk analyses. And the important parts are with respect to a public sector comparator and a value for money assessment to ensure that what we're bringing forward today has the rigor, has followed policy and procedure, and that we're seeking the support from council to proceed. Merci, le maire. Over to Cyril.
Thank you, Pierre. Next slide, please. So I'll kind of be a little bit repetitive because Pierre kind of just summarized a bit of this. So really the process was following our P3 policy and procedures the entire way through, and we'll continue through that process. Some of the key objectives from when we leverage a P3 is really ensuring there's the right value for money, ensuring that the right risks is appropriately allocated to the different parties, and really is a tool that we can leverage to ensure that we effectively and efficiently meet some of the core infrastructure needs and the service needs of the organization, this being one of them in terms of, as Pierre and Ryan articulated, in terms of the needs for a new center in the west side of the city. E&Y was retained. E&Y did a comprehensive analysis. Pierre just referenced 11 different models that were reviewed. So they did extensive review analysis throughout the process. They completed the business case, and the business case really demonstrated the value for money and the risk allocation towards the recommendation before you is to proceed with the design bid finance model. The other key component as well is the land ambulance service grant. They have an eligibility and an ineligibility criteria. And in order to maximize the 50% funding opportunity, this is where it really favors the DBFM model. Because ineligible costs is construction costs, land acquisition costs, direct financing of construction costs. That's not eligible under the LASG grant. But when you structure it this way, really what happens is we structure this as a lease. So now these become eligible costs from a funding perspective. So from a financing perspective, this is the best tool to maximize that grant opportunity at 50%, in addition to the clear business case that was completed by E&Y, where the value for money also supports that, and the risk allocation, risk transfer also supports that. In addition, in terms of layering that down a little deeper, if you want to peel the onion, we've had great success with Don Reed. Dan can attest to this from an operating perspective. Tammy can attest to it from a construction perspective. So it's really a model that works. We also have a couple other models similar to that. The Bell Sensplex in the west, Shankman Center. We have the Superdome in the east. We have a Superdome at Ben Franklin. Those are models that really work well in terms of the structure. So between that extensive analysis and really the opportunity to maximize that funding, this is why the DBFM model is the recommended model. And I'll proceed to Joanne. The next slide, please.
So we're here today seeking Council's approval of the P3 delivery model. This approval will enable the project team to issue some solicitations to get P3 support on board. Those engagements will be done initially within budget that's already been approved. If Council does approve the P3 delivery model, we'll be back at Committee and Council as per the P3 policy that Council has approved in June, seeking approval of the procurement strategy. So we'll be back later this year seeking that approval. And then as a reminder, if we were to get approval in June, we'd come back to Council seeking approval for a preferred partner and the final business agreement, which we expect to be in 2027, late 2027. Next slide, and back to Pierre.
Merci. Notre recommandation du personnel,
Our
c'est d'approuver
staff recommendation is to approve to the staff to proceed with a public-private partnership procurement process. And second, to approve the recommended procurement delivery model of a design, build, finance, maintain model. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Merci à vous. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few comments from myself. First of all, thank you to our staff in Emergency Services and Finance for the detailed overview today. I'm certainly proud to chair the committee that oversees the Ottawa Paramedic Service and appreciate the report before us and appreciate that this wasn't something that has started within the last few weeks. Oh no, we're at capacity. This has been a journey and you've gone through significant and detailed steps to get where you are today. And I thank you for all the work that you've invested in this. If anyone has any doubts, please go to the Don Reed headquarters. I was happy to facilitate a visit early this term with colleagues. It's quite an impressive complex, but if you'd like to see our paramedic service from A to Z in service, please go and visit if you have any doubts before this comes to council. I'm not going to reiterate all the reasons why this is needed. Our city right now of 1 million, we know 400,000 more people. Look at the suburbs, the western suburbs that have expanded tremendously and will continue to increase. It only makes sense that when we have police facilities across the city, when we have other emergency services, other city facilities spread out across the city, that we would have a paramedic service in the West End as well. So, Mayor, I'm not going to speak at length. I believe this is a long-term, solid investment that provides exceptional service to the people of Ottawa for the reasons listed, and I'll be supporting the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Gower.
Thanks. Thanks for the presentation. Just a couple of questions. The land ambulance service grant, is that automatic guaranteed as long as we meet the criteria?
Mr. Mayor, yes.
So like we're not in competition with other cities, or it's not a, you may get this grant, there's a formula and we're confident that that we'll get that reimbursement no matter what.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So to be clear, this is an annual program that's existed for a number of years. Pierre can probably state to win. This is just an annual funding model where the province provides 50% of the funding to operating costs. So because we're structuring this model with a DBFM, as I mentioned, it means that it's really a lease. So the lease costs now we're treating as part of the operating costs. So it falls right into the eligibility of this grant, and it's very much exactly the same as what we did with Don Reed.
Okay, thank you. A couple things from the business case report that was included. One, there was a few of the market participants that expressed concern about the 30-month timeline, although others said that was achievable. What is the risk to the city if that 30-month timeline isn't met? Is there any financial risk? Is there any paramedic operational risk if that takes longer than 30 months?
Mr. Mayor, I mean, I'll kick off with the financials. Obviously, there's a process that we got to follow through now, as kind of Joanne highlighted in terms of the next steps. The next steps, like today, there's no budget impact, et cetera. As we go through the process, we'll be strengthening the cost estimation, working with the proponent, the successful proponent along the journey. And then when we get to that final gate of approval, that's then where we have a better understanding of the cost and the timeline, and then the agreement out of that structured in terms of where that risk falls, in terms of making sure that the construction, the asset is built within that time frame. That's how the process will fall.
And then operationally, from a paramedic perspective?
Mr. Mayor, I'm impatient, but I'm tempered by the policy and the frameworks of the city. Every day we are stressed, but I'm respectful of how things operate, and I'm encouraged to where we're at. And if we're able to follow through on the timelines that Joanne mentioned earlier, I think we'll be able to manage. I remain nervous about that, but I respect in terms of our internal processes to get things done appropriately. Thank you.
Okay. And can staff give us a flavor of the groups that have expressed interest or participated so far? Are they local? Are they Ontario-based? What kind of groups have been interested?
For a project of this size, it's consortiums that will be applying. So it will be a mix of local companies and companies from all over Canada that are getting together to do this work, because it's a quite large project. There will be a need for construction expertise, engineering expertise, and maintenance expertise all in this one contract. So it will be a mix of local and possibly international folks that are interested in this work.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Leeper?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm coming into this discussion a little bit tentative for obvious reasons today about entering into more P3 partnerships. The transfer of risk is not just to the private sector partner, but to the public. And we've seen that it is the public that is paying the biggest price with respect to the LRT challenges that we're having. I'm worried about building a paramedic deployment facility under the same framework, because I can see how some of the risks of things going wrong become public pain, not just the private pain. If the building is late, if systems in the building don't work, if systems in the building stop working, this is very much a healthcare issue. But I am also aware that organizations or institutions like the Royal have been very successfully built using a public-private partnership. So I think my questions are, first, this is about $155 million total cost according to the business analysis that was provided with today's report. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, that was an estimate that was provided to do the analysis to determine what was the most appropriate option in terms of proceeding with this project.
Okay, and I'm very comfortable that that's a ballpark figure, and obviously things will change as we get closer to approving a final procurement. But at $155 million, how much of that would be eligible for reimbursement under the Land Ambulance Service Grant if we went with the DBFM, versus how much of that would be reimbursable if it was a more standard design build contract, for instance?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have the exact numbers right off the top, but from a construction perspective, the construction costs, if we were to do it ourselves, would not be eligible under the grant, so we would lose that. I don't want to say a simple 75 million, 50% of it, but the bulk of it would be, or the bulk of 50% of it would be eligible under the LASG, under the DBFM. If not, a good chunk of that would not be eligible given the criteria of construction costs, land, the direct construction financing is not eligible as part of the grant as well.
So that's tens of millions of dollars, obviously, on a total project cost of something in the vicinity of 150, 160 million dollars, and that's obviously very compelling in terms of value to the taxpayer. And then the second question that I have is. How can we do better in this procurement about giving ourselves the mechanism to solve problems without being subject to lengthy legal battles if problems arise? So with the current LRT, if a contractor and their subcontractor are having problems, we are having difficulties imposing solutions in order to solve the problem. Are there more direct mechanisms that we would contemplate in this procurement to give ourselves more power to solve problems if problems arise?
Mr. Mayor, I think the simple answer is yes, right? So if I peel that back a little bit, coming out of the provincial inquiry, we did make some significant changes to the P3 policy and procedure, which we're following, a little bit the lessons learned approach. The other dynamic is as well is I don't want to compare this P3 with a LRT P3 because there's quite different ends of the spectrum. Appreciating a P3, some might think a P3 is a P3, but it's quite a different spectrum in terms of the actual construction and you're talking about building an asset on a vertical versus the extensive components of the LRT. So I think from the lessons that we've learned with the successful P3s that I mentioned, with the new approach and upgrades to the P3 policy and procedure, and lessons that we continue to learn, I think these are all things that between Joanne's shop, Tammy's shop, working with Ryan, the client, that those are our lenses that are being applied as we go through. And those are things that we'll bring back, right? And this is the other component of making sure we come back on a frequent basis. So appreciating, yes, it may be 30 months, but there's a process that we've improved the P3 policy and procedure. That's part of the process and the framework. So we'll be back, at those different gates with information to kind of make sure that council got the right level of information, confidence in the information, so they make the right decisions. So it's kind of a long way of answering your question, but we're always applying, the complexities that we've learned from into the existing policies and procedures, which is new, and making sure we continue to do that.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just add to what Cyril's saying as well, part of that lived experience also includes our current headquarters on Don Reed. So we have that experience over the last 20 years. We've built a facility of this nature previously in 2005 with some of the features that we would be looking for as part of the West deployment facilities. So Pierre alluded to that in his presentation, things like our decontamination bay and how we store our narcotics and all those different features that currently exist in our headquarters. We have that experience in terms of applying those lessons learned and what's worked for us very well over the last 20 years, which is why that building is still in very, very good condition 20 years later.
You've raised something that I've been wondering about, which is in terms of the potential risks of involved in building a new building, of what might go wrong. How much further advanced would some of the technologies that go into the new building be? Because that's where I think we see the potential for the introduction of risks that might have significant implications for the public who depend on the services.
The existing, Mr. Mayor, the existing facility was a LEED certified, and the new facility, I think we're going to improve upon that. And we're working with different areas within the city, such as looking at should we have an electric fleet in the future, or should it be hydrogen-based? And those are two significant decisions that the city will be making in the coming months, which will have an incredible impact on the design or the operation of the new facility. So that's just one example of something that'll be important to incorporate, or how we incorporate into a new facility. One other item in terms of our learning from the existing facility from 2005 was the incredible work that the city undertook in terms of the maintenance component and the level of detail in how the facility would be maintained and the life cycle renewal that would be maintained, so that the building would not be cannibalized in the end years of the lease. So we're in year 21 of the existing facility. It's very good. The life cycle funds are available to maintain all of the HVAC and all of the facility in terms of its integrity, and that has served us very well. And that's been an important learning for us in terms of what we're going to take forward into the new facility, is to ensure that the maintenance component, as much as we talk about construction, that the maintenance specifications are highly detailed so that the facility will be maintained over the course of the life, which is expected to be 30 years, at which point hopefully it reverts to the city for the sum of $1, which is currently in the process for the existing facility on Don Reed Drive. Thank you.
But you're not telling me that the new building is going to be a significant leap in technology advancement? Because if we're going to go down the DBFM path, I would be concerned if we go really far down the path of something that is unproven and untried for reasons that I shouldn't need to belabor.
As referenced earlier, we are incorporating all of the lessons learned from the LRT public inquiry, which include things like relying on tried, tested, and true technology. One of the things that we are doing, if we get approval today, is engaging with an engineering architect advocate to ensure that the City of Ottawa has the subject matter expertise required to spec our requirements in a manner that is achievable and will meet all of our needs.
That's significantly comforting to me. I like the language that's being used to describe that. I'll continue to listen to the debate. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for the report today. Thanks to the paramedics in our city for the incredible work you do. We hear from residents on this work regularly, and can't thank you enough for your responsiveness. Clearly, the expansion space is needed. Clearly, more capacity is needed, and it should also be done as fast as possible. I do have questions about the procurement model. So we need to do this project. It's how we procure it where I have questions and issues. The DBB scored much higher than the DBFM. Why was that?
Mr. Mayor, I think once you peel in the other factors, I think one of the it's been a while since I read the business case for me a while, but one of the preceding factors in there as well was once you apply the grant, that's where the real value gets picked up in the DBFM, in addition to the risk transfer. We know that from an external perspective, public entities are rates. So we get better, to be frank, we can get better debt servicing rates ourselves than private. That's one of the reasons why that was there, kind of thing. But the reality is when you layer in the funding model, the key component here is the 50% funding model. That's where it really advances, to be frank, the DBFM model is that criteria and that option.
Yeah, and I looked at that because on its face, that made sense to me. The land ambulance service grant funding reimburses 50% of eligible costs, including capital amortization, operating expenses, and then in some cases the DBFM interest. But then in reading the analysis by EY, there was a lot more information there on how the city could employ an alternative model that would also cover the interest expenses if we were borrowing on it, so that the land service grant would cover the same amount or the same funding options as the DBFM, and that's part of what I wanted to dig into. Is we had one score at, I think it was 90, and then the DBFM was at 74 overall score, and there's obviously a difference there. I want the best outcome, including the quickest outcome. One of the concerns I had, it was noted that the DBFM model would take a lot longer. It would require 2 rounds of approvals. There'd be delays in the approvals that would be more likely under the DBFM model. And the city indicated that the applications and approvals for applicable grants and funding would need to be submitted a year in advance of receipt of any funding, and it increased the potential impact related to the available funding, as well as the risk of unavoidable funding was amended to increase the potential impact. So the longest option seemed to be the DBFM option in terms of actually getting this built.
The procurement process of a DBFM is a longer model. I will say that the construction of the actual project is quicker under that model. So the time is made up for it when design and construction can happen at the same time because we are working with one single partner. And so the construction is quicker versus a traditional design bid build.
Okay. In some of the stakeholder analysis, they were noting that based on their experience, city staff as overseers of the DBFM agreements have had to spend a lot more energy and time on these things to ensure that they're meeting the specifications of what agreement that they signed, rather than having, say, city staff do this themselves. They also mentioned that, where the private partner does not actively seek to preserve or lengthen the life of the equipment beyond rigid expected application, which of course, if you're the private partner, you're just going to do what's in that contract. You're not going to go above and beyond. That there could be challenges under that DBFM model to ensure that maintenance is done, so that when we go to potentially reacquire the facility, I guess we have that option after 30 years that we would purchase it for whatever value it is back at that time, that it's in the best shape possible for us to do so. And they were indicating some concerns as the stakeholders in under that model. Is that city staff's experience, and is that a concern at all?
Mr. Mayor, I think, to reiterate what Ryan said and Pierre said, and Dan can even speak to as well, on the maintenance side, I think, E&Y, that's something that will be a risk in those traditional models. But I think then it comes back to the relationship and the facilitation over the term of that agreement. And as Pierre and Ryan highlighted, Don Reed right now is in great shape. It's in very good shape. The maintenance has been great. I think Dan can attest that the relationship has been strong. There's a reserve where there's money put back. So I think it's been managed really, really well. So it's fair, and as E&Y should highlight that as a potential risk. Then we look at the mitigation. So we look at what we've done from Don Reed, that relationship, lessons learned, and then you kind of mitigate that risk from being repeatable, if you will.
Yeah, that's helpful. And Don Reed is also a 30-year contract?
Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. And so we're 21 years in 9 years' time, we can purchase it back. I suppose that, are the numbers set there on what we would buy it for, or how does it work?
Mr. Mayor, the facility is the current facility at Don Reed Drive was built in 2005. In 2035, it'll revert to the city for $1.
Okay,
that's in the agreement.
Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful. With regard to the different, I guess, amounts that have been allocated for the DBFM, the DB, and the DBB, when you looked at that alternative scenario with the city borrowing to do this, where the interest costs would be covered by the provincial grant, the design bid build came out as the least cost before taking into account retained risks. And the question I always have in those risk analysis, that risk transfer, is how accurate is it, right? Because you got all kinds of actors out there that say, you're retaining this risk, you're not retaining this risk. In the LRT one, for example, when we did this, we didn't have legal risk in there. And that now we've seen there's big legal costs and concerns with that. So in this case, are legal risks part of the analysis of that risk transfer in this procurement model, or is that separate?
Mr. Mayor, yes. I guess building on the previous answers and the lessons learned from the LRT inquiry, et cetera, and working with corporate commercial lawyers, those risks are built in as best as they can.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big one. And you never know if those risks are going to materialize or not. But on its face, the DBB models seem to be what city staff know best. And if those risks don't materialize, then we might be paying a bit more than we would have otherwise, because a lot of that amount, that $50 million versus that $16 million, that is the retained risk we keep. So, Mayor, I'll wrap up. I appreciate the analysis here today. I'll be more apt to consider this in June. I think it comes back in June, Mayor. Is that what they were saying? If we can just confirm that, because I might be okay with saying, let's go look at this, but I want a final look at this in June before it comes back. Is that what we're doing?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We'll be back in June. So again, today's decision, we move to the next step. There's no budget impact. There's no contractual obligation today. We'll be back in June at the next gate, and then with more information, and then we'll be back again.
Okay.
Subsequently to that.
Is the next gate, though, no procurement discussion? This is the procurement discussion? Because if this is the procurement discussion on the 3 different models, then my vote will be affected by that. I, of course, want to move forward with a project. And if that's the decision in June, saying we're going with the DBFM, and in June it's coming back as a DBFM, the other procurement options won't be there. I just want to be clear on the process.
So, Mr. Mayor, today we're seeking endorsement to proceed with the DBFM model.
Okay.
That's what we're looking
So
for today.
that's where my concern lies. I might come back in June and say, yes, let's go ahead with the project. But my concern on the DBFM versus the DBB is maintained based on the report that's in front of us. Thanks, Mayor, for the extra time.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I know, Chief, you spoke to the accessibility component to this. We've had numerous conversations about the value add that will come down the road once we're able to realign McKenna-Casey into that commercial park. It will both value pulling larger truck traffic, commercial truck traffic off of Strandherd, but it will also provide a more streamlined mechanism for your ambulance systems to get onto the 416 highway. I was wondering if you could just perhaps unpack that a little bit from your perspective, or if city staff had any comments on the advancement of at least the first phase of a realigned McKenna-Casey, which would get into that first parcel, which is just a few hundred meters off of where currently that dead ends.
Mr. Mayor, the current facility on Strandherd Drive is beside the snow dump facility. Existing behind the car dealerships is Philsar Road, and currently it ends at the snow dump and at the access point to the 4061 location. The aspiration here is that Philsar will continue south and connect with McKenna-Casey. And by doing that, that will provide the Ottawa Paramedic Service the ability to deploy going west to connect to the 416. So they deploy onto McKenna-Casey, up Moody Drive, and then access to 416, and not add to the significant traffic that is already on Strandherd. We will be making use of Strandherd, but the idea of having McKenna-Casey as an alternate will be a fantastic addition to our service delivery. Just to put it in context, the existing facility on Donry Drive, we're at the end of a cul-de-sac. And for 20 years, we've been trying to get a secondary egress point, to which we've been unsuccessful through the hydro corridor. And this has always had kind of a significant operational risk for us. And by having the West Deployment Facility with access to McKenna-Casey will be a wonderful addition in terms of our service delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I wanted to take a few moments to speak in support of the report concerning the proposed Ottawa West Paramedic Depot to be located in Barrhaven along Strandherd Road. And I do remember fondly, Chief, when you first called me up about this a couple of years ago to have the conversations, and I've been supportive of this project since the beginning. At its core, this proposal is about public safety, response time, and planning responsibly for growth. As Ottawa continues to expand westward and southward, our emergency services infrastructure must evolve with it. We cannot rely on systems designed for a much smaller city, particularly as the nature of emergency calls continues to change. Paramedics today are not only responding to medical emergencies, they're often the first point of contact in crisis situations, including mental health crises, substance-related emergencies, and complex social calls. And these calls are increasing in frequency and complexity, and they require timely, well-coordinated responses. Barrhaven is one of the fastest growing communities in Ottawa. What was once considered the suburban edge is now a major population center with increasing density, congestion, and demand for emergency services. In this context, minutes matter, and response times directly affect patient outcomes and the ability to de-escalate crisis situations safely. We've heard from our paramedics and staff regarding the improvements to access and timeliness in terms of resource deployability. Positioning paramedics closer to where emergencies and crises are occurring improves outcomes, reduces strains on hospitals, and it supports better coordination with police, fire, and community-based services. The proposed Strandherd Road location is significant from an operational perspective. It provides access to key transportation corridors and allows for more effective deployment across the west and southwest. And as we've just heard, it can be leveraged and support the realignment of McKenna-Casey Road, which would give more proximate access to the 416 as an alternate. This project is also about supporting the paramedics themselves. Paramedics are working in high-pressure environment, responding increasingly to complex calls that go well beyond traditional emergency medicine. Infrastructure matters. Well-located facilities reduce unnecessary travel, improve shift transition, and help manage fatigue and burnout. Supporting our paramedics in this way directly impacts service quality, workforce sustainability, and the city's broader crisis response capacity. From a financial perspective, it's important to acknowledge that any capital project carries risk, particularly in today's construction environment. But staff have outlined the cost control measures to manage the construction risk and that there's a successful precedent for this type of P3 model. At the same time, the cost of not investing is significant. When emergency response systems are stretched, the impacts are felt across the system, in emergency rooms, policing, and community services. Proactive investment in paramedic infrastructure helps to stabilize the entire crisis response continuum. In closing, this proposal is not simply about constructing a building. It's about strengthening Ottawa's emergency and crisis response system, protecting response times, supporting our paramedics, and planning responsibly for the city that we are becoming. While the facility is located in Barrhaven, the benefits extend far beyond one ward. Improved West End and Southern coverage strengthens citywide resilience and ensures emergency services remain reliable, equitable, and responsive as Ottawa continues to grow. I believe this report represents a necessary and forward-looking investment, and I look forward to supporting it at Council. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you again for the presentation and for answering all the questions. Do we need a recorded vote on this, or are we?
I'm just going to dissent on the procurement model. I'll support the project, but
okay.
Procurement model. Thank you.
Okay, so is that carried? With that one note about Councillor Menard? Okay, thank you. Moving to item 8.1, Affordable Housing Debt Funding Pilot Project, and we have a presentation about this. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Getting there. So next we have another good news story, I guess. I'll frame it this way in terms of the Affordable Housing Debt Funding Pilot. If you recall, when we were before you a couple of years ago with the Housing Long Range Financial Plan, we were given the direction to go away and look at some debt financing as an opportunity. So Isabel and the team has done a great job working closely with OCHC, and I'll deem as a very creative, modern way of leveraging the tools we have at the city to really enable and further enable additional units, additional contributions towards affordable housing. So I'll pass over to Isabel to walk through the presentation.
Thank you, Cyril. So I'm here today to present the culmination of a significant amount of work done in collaboration with Ottawa Community Housing, City of Ottawa Finance, Strategic Initiatives, and Affordable Housing teams. I would like to thank all those that contributed to this initiative, and I'm pleased to share the results of that work. Next slide. In November 2024, Council approved the updated Housing Services Long-Range Financial Plan to 2030. A funding strategy was developed to gradually increase the affordable housing capital program each year to cover $22 million annually in base funding, not including other potential sources of revenue. Council directed staff to explore the feasibility of using a portion of this annual allocation for debt servicing rather than a direct equity contribution. The Council
asked personnel to see if there can be an alternative financing approach for the debt.
Additional debt would help to advance affordable housing construction as long as the project is self-sustaining within 10 years. This would ensure that there is no additional pressure on the city's affordable housing budget and that the amount allocated for debt servicing is not locked in for longer than 10 years. To further limit the city's financial risk exposure, this would be done on a pilot basis. Ottawa Community Housing Corporation was chosen for the pilot due to the fact that the city is sole shareholder of the corporation and their debt is already included in the city's financial statements for statutory and regulatory reporting purposes. Next slide. The housing LRFP targeted the construction of 500 new affordable and supportive units annually. OCH indicated a capacity to deliver up to 60% of that target, or 300 annually. The 2024 LRFP highlighted the equity and funding shortfall for affordable housing, particularly since 2021, with the increase in construction costs and the costs of borrowing. The funding strategy showed a projected funding gap of over 140 million by 2028, even with the existing programs such as CMHC's Affordable Housing Fund and funding from the City and Province of Ontario. Since then, there has been announcements for a new Build Canada Homes program and other potential funding from senior levels of government, which could help to advance projects further. Next slide. So this diagram highlights the key sources of financing available, what steps have been taken in place in the evolution of the framework, and the additional financing tools that are proposed as part of the Affordable Housing Debenture framework.
This diagram provides you with the main source of funding, and this will evolve, especially if we get complementary funding.
Qualifies for 55 to 65 loan-to-value financing. With advanced funding from debenture issuance, combined with other currently available funding sources of equity from OCH, the city, provincial funding, Housing Accelerator Fund, and potentially Build Canada Homes, that loan-to-value ratio could be increased to 75%. OCH reviewed the possibility of issuing their own debenture, but with council direction to explore a financing pilot, and after reviewing the benefits of a city-issued debenture and other financing tools available to the city, like the promissory note program, the framework and scope of this pilot became clear. It made much more sense for the city to issue the debenture on OCH's behalf. Furthermore, the city implemented a sustainable bond program in 2023. The city has not had many opportunities to fund purely social investments with a sustainable bond, which includes a category of eligible projects for social and affordable housing. The proposed affordable housing debenture framework is a good opportunity for the city to expand its use of the sustainable bond framework, which is becoming increasingly popular with investors. Next slide. The first report recommendation is for the approval of the implementation of an affordable housing debenture framework that would maximize debt financing on affordable housing projects to advance the development of more units to reach our affordable housing targets sooner. The city's promissory note program would be used for short-term construction financing at much lower interest rates than OCH could obtain on their own. The Housing Reserve, which is funded by the annual budget allocation for affordable housing and allocated to the Affordable Housing Capital Program, would be used to fund the interest payments during construction. When construction is complete, the short-term financing would be converted to mortgages and the remainder funded with a sustainable bond issuance. The debenture would be tied to specific OCH projects. It would be classified as OCH debt, and a credit agreement signed between OCH and the city to secure that debt. Next slide. This framework will require approval from council to expand the use of the Housing Reserve. Currently, the Housing Reserve is funded by a base budget from the citywide operating budget, vacant unit tax revenue, any housing year-end operating surpluses, 25% of surplus land sales, and cash in lieu of affordable housing. Funds are distributed from the Housing Reserve to the Affordable Housing Capital Program, which has traditionally been used to allocate equity contributions to nonprofit housing providers as part of an RFP process or to fill funding gaps in active projects. The proposed framework expands the use of these funds to service debt. Once debt is issued, the debt servicing cost becomes a financial commitment for 40 years. The agreement with OCH will need to include a commitment to be self-sustaining within 10 years, such that the city's annual affordable housing budget doesn't get locked in to pay back the debt servicing indefinitely. Next slide. For the purposes of the pilot, the city insisted that the proposed projects meet a minimum criteria. The funds to be used for affordable housing units. All other funding options are exhausted and an equity shortfall remains. Primary loan to value ratio not to exceed 75%. The debt servicing cost is not to exceed $2 million annually, and the rents from the development will be sufficient to cover the debt servicing within 10 years. OCH identified 3 current or shovel-ready projects that qualify and would advance the construction of 550 new affordable housing units. Per CMHC's definition of affordable, 30 to 40% of the homes would be at 70 to 80% of median market rent, and the remainder at average market rent. The total estimated debt required is just under $26 million, with an estimated average annual debt servicing cost of $1.3 million. If council approves this pilot to allocate a maximum of $2 million annually to debt servicing, the 3 projects leave room for additional projects to be added to this pilot. Next slide. So finally, recommendation 4 asks for delegated authority for the city CFO to negotiate credit and legal agreements with OCH to secure the debt for each project. As mentioned earlier, this debt will not impact the city's overall credit rating. OCH's debt is already included in the city's financial reporting, but OCH will be responsible for the repayment of the debt at least within 10 years of debt issuance. Overall, this framework is another positive initiative for the City of Ottawa to advance the construction of affordable housing. 550 additional housing units can be built much sooner than having to wait until sufficient funding sources materialize. The city would be funding an estimated $12.3 million over 10 years in debt servicing versus allocating $26 million in cash upfront in a single year. We are leveraging the city's strong credit rating to borrow at lower rates than OCH could obtain. It builds on the city's existing sustainable bond program. It is budget neutral, and it significantly reduces financial risk for the city and OCH, leveraging the city's existing expertise in debt issuance, reporting, and oversight. This concludes my presentation, and we have the team here, including OCH, to answer any questions you may have on this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Councillor Gower.
Thanks, Mayor. This is good. This is really good. We've been talking about it at our OCH committees and boards for a number of years now, so I'm glad to finally see this coming forward. It's referred to as a pilot, but I didn't see in the report clearly what are we measuring in the pilot and what is the timeline?
So what we are measuring is the ability to increase the debt on some of these projects and having them being able to pay back in sufficient amount of time. So we are adding more debt to projects than we would have historically, but for the ones that are good candidates for this, they should be able to be self-sustaining going forward. So that's what we're measuring, is whether or not it can actually cover its own debt servicing for the next 40 years.
And how long is it going to take to evaluate that success?
So probably early after the construction is complete, we issue the debt, we can see the revenues coming in, we can really get a clear picture of whether or not it could be self-sustaining going forward. I don't know if OCH would have any more to add to that.
I would say that you'll see the success of it almost immediately. You'll see units or homes going in the ground earlier than they otherwise would have. We have existing CMHC funding agreements for these projects, and what we're awaiting is the ability to essentially go to construction on particularly Beausoleil and Geyser Place, and that's a requirement from CMHC to show that we have the funding for the remainder of the project. So I think in terms of initial, you'll see the projects go ahead much more rapidly than we would have if we were sort of waiting for the current process to shake out with the equity funding.
Yeah, I'm glad you've articulated that, because this kind of financing, it might be new for the city, but other jurisdictions have used this for a long time and used it successfully. And I think OCH has a very strong track record in terms of the financial pro formas and performance financially of the organization, and I feel like we're dipping our baby toe really tentatively into the water. I think we could be going a lot more aggressively with this, given the number of affordable housing units that we need to build over the next 5 to 10 years. So I hope we can evaluate this early. I hope we see some positive financial signals, and I hope that we can invest a lot more than $26 million in the next few years and really expand this program. It gives another, if you like, revenue stream, a revenue source to OCH. unfortunately, every level of government is kind of flaky when it comes to funding programs, and this is something that we have a lot of control over. So I think we should be taking more risk and moving a lot more aggressively forward. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor King.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. I'll also be brief here. I just wanted to commend staff on this pilot. This pilot does represent sound financial innovation that could significantly accelerate affordable housing delivery, and the use of the city's AAA credit rating to access cheaper financing is exactly the kind of creative problem solving that we need. I would also echo the comments of Councillor Gower. I think we need to move faster on this and be more aggressive in terms of our adoption of these types of initiatives. I'm really gratified to support this pilot because it does provide the opportunity to unlock a lot of potential at OCH in terms of capacity, from 116 units to 300 units per year. I remember in the last term having conversations with some members of council who were just looking at achieving 50 units a year. And I mean, we need to really ensure that we are enhancing the number of units that are unlocked. The fact that we're also seeing a 30 to 50 basis point interest savings, as well as accelerating construction timelines and aligning with our sustainable bond framework, really is impressive. And I'm very pleased to see the coordination of this financial commitment between the city and Ottawa Community Housing. So I will be very pleased to support this initiative. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor King. Vice Chair Kitts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to concur with the previous two speakers. I think this is absolutely fabulous. It's a creative solution to a practical problem that is going to have a real impact. So I did want to applaud the team. And I know in this case, you know, OCH is typically located where good infrastructure exists. But I would be remiss not to use the opportunity to say I hope to see the same creative problem solving come to our infrastructure challenge, or be applied to our infrastructure challenges as well. You know, I think communities are more than just units, and we are using every lever available to accelerate housing and accelerate units, which we absolutely need to do. But I fear if we don't take into consideration the big picture of what makes communities functional, it'll come home to roost the way it has in my community. So I know I've had a motion passed asking that we look at debt financing road infrastructure when we can, you know, kind of predict where the DCs are going to eventually flow through to those projects, and the LRFP will consider that. But I had to just use the opportunity to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kitts. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I too will be supporting this. It strikes me, and I think I put in my newsletter this weekend, that $2 million over 10 years seems like a very manageable exposure to risks. So I know that you are listening to comments that are being made by folks like Councillor King, that there's probably room to be more ambitious. But in that vein, I am just wondering, what would the considerations be before extending this from our own wholly owned not-for-profit housing provider in Ottawa Community Housing and extending the same sort of debt financing to some of our other not-for-profit partners who might be interested in leveraging this? What would that decision tree look like?
So the plan is to come back to council with the results of the pilot, and the idea of the pilot is to identify what are the financial metrics that need to be in place for this to be successful outside to other service providers. So we really need to work through the details. How are we going to work through this? The credit agreements that need to be in place. What are the financial levers that have to be in place to make it financially sustainable going forward? Because it has to be financially sustainable. And so it will really help us work through those details.
That sounds, that doesn't sound like an assessment of risks conversation as much as a assessment of the mechanism and how it works kind of a decision.
And the financial risks and how we mitigate them.
Okay. Again, I'll just come back. It doesn't strike me that we are exposing ourselves to very much financial risk. So I'll be interesting to see how that discussion evolves as we start thinking about our other not-for-profit partners. I'm happy to support this. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to our finance team for working so closely with OCHC on this pilot project. It was 6 years ago where we declared a housing and homelessness emergency, and that it had to be dealt with as soon as possible. So we had to look at new ways to get that housing built. Given that we are OCH is the sole the city is the sole shareholder of OCH. This is obviously a strong relationship, and I think it's almost a misnomer to call this debt. This is investment. This is investment because the effects of this is more people with housing. This is good for our city overall in many, many ways that can be looked at financially and otherwise as our society. So I think this is a start, and it's the right thing to do to make it a pilot project, to check it out. But I have no doubt that this is where we should be going. I just wanted to ask a bit about, so that people can hear about the projects, and if I can ask our OCHC representatives of what we're looking at to start with.
So the first three projects that are in the pilot, the first one is actually nearing completion. It's the 273 unit homes at Mosaic 2 in the downtown core, across from the first project we built. The second project is at Beausoleil downtown. It's 159 homes. Ready. It's already been designed and it's ready to go to construction once this funding is approved. Looking for delivery by 2028 if we can get the shovel in the ground this year. And then the last one is Geyser Place down in Byerhaven. It is 112 units, Chris. 112 units. And also the same status as Beausoleil. It's designed, it's shovel ready, and it's expected to go to construction tender in the next couple of months and be in the ground by the end of the year.
Thank you. These are all very exciting projects, and of course there's others that are waiting to come to the start line. So this is a good way to kick it off. I just want to say that this is a very innovative financial way to say yes to more affordable housing in Ottawa and to offer predictable funding streams. So I want to thank everyone for their participation. I don't have a vote at this committee, but obviously I'm just beyond supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Thank you, everyone, for presentation. Is that carried? Thanks again. There were no in-camera items. I'll note the information previously distributed. Any notices of motion? Inquiries. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the VUT registration, how many email addresses have we collected over the last couple of years, and how much money have we saved in postage as a result, especially given the uncertain Canada Post delivery schedules going forward? Over the last 3 years, what is the total cost of postage has been, and what is the projected cost in 2026, and how much could be saved by moving more residents to electronic billing? And we are working with are we working with the communications and legal to make sure that we are using email addresses effectively, including encouraging people to move off paper-based billing and on notices, and how much money are we saving? Could the savings be relying less on mail? Have we confirmed with legal clerks that the email addresses can be used for natural disasters, national emergencies, or other important city services for communications? When I say natural disasters, I'm also thinking major service disruptions or one-time time-sensitive city information. if we can also use it in that way, what would need to change? Would this require an opt-in, and how quickly could we make that be built into the VAT registration process? Looking ahead, when the future reporting comes back, can we also look at better options for repeat registrants, one-time registrants that carries over for multiple years instead of having to re-register annually, and only at the point of sale where we'd look at having them re-register? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Are there any other inquiries? Any other business? Motion to adjourn? Carried. Thank you, everyone.